Ask Reddit. Doctors, nurses, EMTs, etc. What's the most shocking thing you've seen after thinking nothing could surprise me anymore? I think I've mentioned this one in the past. Elderly guy came in the middle of winter. Legs were frozen to mid-thigh. And I mean truly, ice block frozen. At the same time he had a bunch of serious burns all over his torso. His gas had been cut off in the middle of winter, technically illegal if the gas company has documentation of an elderly or handicapped person in the home. He had been trying to keep warm with an incandescent light bulb. He kept falling asleep and the bulb would fall on him, waking him up and causing small, fairly deep burns. He had immediate lower extremity amputations, rewarming, and went to the burn unit. He ended up dying within a few days. The level of suffering he must have gone through is immense. To this day, it is one of the saddest, most preventable deaths I've ever seen. ERRN here. The baby born en route coming from 4 hours north. Preemie at 29 weeks, no esophagus, no soft palate, no genitals, severely deformed spine and extremities, only one leg, not breathing on their own, and literally none of the organs developed anywhere close to functionally. Mom had a long history of substance abuse, including throughout the pregnancy. No prenatal care, despite her community trying extremely hard. Other children already apprehended. Oh, and mom was hemorrhaging. Big time. Not necessarily the most shocking, but it definitely sticks with me. One of the paramedics that brought them was absolutely distraught. Edit to add, mom ended up recovering with no complications. Baby was kept alive for 7 hours before mom finally withdrew care, and passed peacefully in her arms. I've answered this before, so here it is again. Spoiler alert for triggered and squeamish, don't read further, skip to the end. Day off on vacation with another paramedic. On the highway, saw an accident happening in the distance. We were in the funnel to get by. An OPD, fire, or EMS. On scene, and it was bad. So we stopped to help. This was early days of cell phones, but we had one, and called it in. I should have known by the smell what was going on when I opened my car door. Diesel, body parts, exhaust. I will never forget that smell. Internal organs have their own special smell, and if lavender was in that mix, lavender would repulse me for the rest of my life. DPS report said a pickup truck at 80 miles per hour blew a tire, and went into oncoming lanes and hit an 18-wheeler at the pinch point, driving the 18-wheeler into the lanes of traffic the first truck originated from. This caused a head-on collision with a family car at about 120 miles per hour combined impact, and the impacts from the vehicles that couldn't stop drove the family car under the cab of the 18-wheeler. The vehicles were so badly mangled you couldn't tell it was a pickup. Triage is a system where you look at the injuries and decide who is going to get help. You look at dead or dying and realize you can't help them and move to someone else who is dying, but you can save, and you help them. Had to do that. 5 fatalities, pickup truck driver was in pieces, literally. 18-wheeler driver had to be life-flighty to trauma. 3 others transported to ER with serious but not life-threatening injuries. Hour and a half later we were still trying to get the cab off the family car, with a high crane type wrecker, even though I had already given up hope of anybody being alive. Relatives of the family car had passed the accident but didn't see the car, as it was crushed under the cab of the 18-wheeler and was unrecognizable, returned to the scene when their loved ones they were behind weren't at home. DPS, fire, EMS and wreckers had been on scene for a while. My friend and I had taken a backseat to rescue efforts by this time, and had cleaned up and were leaving as we would only be in the way at this point, when the family approached us to ask about the details. The rescue effort moved into high gear when I told the captain that the possible occupants of the family car was a mother, father, grandmother, and 1-day-old infant that had just been released from the hospital a few hours before. They were the other 4 fatalities. Ton of bricks. Just as vivid as the day it happened. A patient's insurance company refused to pay for a PET scan. When the patient said they would pay for their own PET scan out of pocket, the insurance company said they would refuse to pay for any treatment, testing, or further workup based on evidence from the PET scan, if she paid for it herself. It was the most petty, bullshit, evil thing I've seen insurance do in a long time, and I see them do petty bullshit every day. Edit, it was Martin's Point Insurance. This guy kept coming to my unit because he was aspirating on something. He had a tracheostomy and a feeding tube in his stomach, so we were confused why he was being admitted every few weeks for aspiration if he wasn't consuming food orally. We eventually learned that his sister/wife, yes, had been pouring whiskey down his trach. To top it off, he groped or tried to grope every female nurse and tech that had him. 20-year medic. It's actually really hard to say what's the most shocking, but I once had a guy on hallucinogens completely remove all the tissue from his left forearm. Took it clear down to the radius and ulna. Dude was just chilling like everything was normal. It was crazy and definitely goes on the list. XEMT here. I always thought babies took time to be born. Well, that's not always the case. I was helping a woman who wasn't English speaking. She was very pregnant, and we kept trying to tell her to calm down, to breathe, but she was just screaming, and in a blink a baby popped out into her sweatpants. We cut off her blue sweatpants and there was a baby girl. Just like that. It just popped out. Comment, I had a friend that was due for her third baby. In the ER getting assessed, while laying on her exam table, she said, "I think I'm going to sneeze." She sneezed and out popped the baby. Psychiatrist here. Had a 6-year-old child with behavioral problems have a breakthrough with his therapist that he feels unloved and needs more affection from his mom. The very next day in his appointment with me I tell his mother this, he looks at her, and she replies with okay and goes back to playing on her phone. As a father, that broke my heart into a million little pieces. I've seen murderers, psychopaths, even interviewed serial killers and seen the dregs of humanity. But a mother ignoring her child's cry for affection in front of me? This is how we create monsters. Doctor here, I once had a psychotic patient jump in front of a lorry, pretty much broke every rib on his right side and collapsed his lung. Here's the thing, he didn't die and actually managed to walk home, where he then sawed off both of his own feet and partially his right hand. Only found because the neighbor found one of the feet in his garden. Never underestimate what someone will do in extremes of mental health. Worked in a NICU. Woman had a very premature baby at home, like 25 to 26 weeks gestation. She and her partner decided to put the baby in a tube sock, and then in a shoebox to bring it to the hospital. But they got hungry and went through a McDonald's drive-thru with said very tiny baby in his sock box. It wasn't so much that they did the drive-thru, but that they told everyone about it and didn't think it was an interesting choice. Kid turned out reasonably okay. Mental health crisis worker. L worked for a lockdown psych unit with a heavy SVP, sexually violent predator, and just an all-around scary population of men. On this particular day, it was all female staff with the exception of one small man, and we are all tiny people. Management sucked and poorly/inadequately staffed all the time. We had an SVPM/32.6, 375 pounds. This man was a mountain who liked to hit his head on the wall until he had large open wounds on his face/forehead. He loved seeing blood, playing in it, drinking it, collecting it, masturbating with it. It didn't matter where the blood came from or how he got it. It was just endless fun for him. The day prior, he had hit his head in his cell and needed to get his head stapled shut, and from there sent to our facility for mental health treatment. We had him on a 1-to-1, he had his back turned away from staff and used a psych pen to help dig out the staples. It quickly became apparent what he was doing, and my co-worker hit the alarm, and the rest of us came running. Nursing saw and ran back to the station to get our lights out shot. The patient had half of them out and used his fingers to pull the wound apart to get the rest of the staples out. Once he realized he could put his finger in, he just started shoving his fingers deeper in the wound and trying to pull down in the wound, and then hit his head on the wall. Blood is splattered everywhere. Like, there was so much blood. It was like watching a real-life horror movie. Anyway, he turns to us with a soulless stare, flat effect, and drenched in blood. He says, "Your turn." He turns and looks at me and launches towards me, and I take off running. He's laughing like a goddamn hyena, saying, "Gotcha, it's just prank," and then proceeds to sit down and play in the blood like he was in a splash pool. He was given a night-night shot and trip to the ED. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below what you thought about these stories. What would you do in their situation? Here are some other videos I highly recommend, and don't forget you'll find a wide variety of them on my channel. See you next time.